Hello, and thanks again for joining me at the Impulsive Thinker podcast. I'm your host, Andre Brisson. I just want to thank CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada, Canada's only ADHD charity, for hosting and not hosting, but sponsoring this episode. And today I want to welcome you, Mark Fujiwara. We know each other through Strategic Coach. We had a conversation last year, a couple of weeks ago, which really intrigued me. I think we got to talk about it. And it's all about men and mental health, how it's a taboo in society, in Western society, and why it's important to talk about it, and not only talk about it, but to also get it dealt with, get treatment, or even just openly talk to other people. So very important topic. But before we start on this, I'd like you to just introduce yourself briefly, who you are, who you're with, what are you, and what do you do?
Sure. Thanks so much, Andre, for having me on here. It's a big honor, and excited to get my message out there. So Andre, my core business is certified portfolio manager, certified exit planning analyst. Have a family office practice, and especially just bringing together a right cohesive team to get best results and really optimize their wealth created by typically some people selling their companies with the best terms. Use the same approach to getting results for clients, whether it's financial, non-financial as well. And that brought me into how we met, actually, with Strategic Coach, as well as partnering up with Justin Breen on Bruckner Network, which is pretty much what I do. We bring the most value is delivering the right directions to the right people at the right time, and providing thought leadership from a heavily vetted set of members there.
Right. So that's your next success project, and it's been a big one too.
It's been huge. Yeah. Partnering up with the right person. Really it's a strategic coach business model, if you will, who, not how, staying in the lane, abundance, everything that goes along with it. So,
so you're an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Entrepreneur who has suffered mental illness.
Yes.
And why it's important for the ADHD entrepreneur is a lot of times the ADHD has comorbidities, is what they're called. So you're diagnosed with ADHD, comorbidity of anxiety, depression, personality, borderline personality. So there's a bunch of others. And a lot of times what will occur is actually you'll be diagnosed with depression or anxiety first, and nothing's really working with the treatment until the ADHD is identified. And once you treat the ADHD, then all of a sudden the anxiety and the depression can actually gets better. But that's not necessarily what we're talking about in your case. But Mark, I'd like you to share your story, if you will, and to get this ball rolling.
Sure. It's interesting because I felt like just something was off. I can go back to even as early as being in elementary school, where I noticed that I had difficult managing my time, difficult focusing, and I have to put in measures. But on the opposite side, when it was something when I was in flow or something that I was highly interested, I could do something for the whole day and not realize how much time was involved. I first got diagnosed with depression when I was 23. The reason why I went to a psychotherapist was the fact that I was in a very small group one day, and I was in the financial business at the time, just like I am now. And before I could even start to talk about who I was in my business, it was just the strangest feeling of a full-blown panic attack. I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew was I might die, I might collapse, and I had to get the heck out of there. And I was afraid that if I opened my mouth to say a word, I would fall on the floor, or even to as extreme measure as I would die. I went to the psychotherapist, and she diagnosed me with clinical depression after two meetings. Prescribed me with Prozac and a drug called Ativan. Ativan is today's version of Xanax for anxiety. I started to talk to the people around me, and I got comments of the fact that this was all in my head, that I'm the happiest person they know. In fact, to this day, I ask people, like, how would you describe me? And it's typically happy, uplifting, positive, the full gamut right there. And then I was almost, I was almost like questioned about the anxiety too. It's like, why do you have to be, you're a 23-year-old, you don't have any kids, you're making good money. Why would you be anxious? I think that's kind of in your head as well. So I didn't take the medication at all and just kind of live with it. And it got pretty bad where I couldn't ride in a car sometimes, knowing that I would be on a freeway, just because I couldn't get out. I knew anytime I'd speak in front of a group of more than, say, 3 or 4 people, I would physically get ill. I would, I always want to avoid that situation. And
so the depression and anxiety was actually interfering with your life.
Absolutely. Anxiety, and then that spurs on depression. Depression would come up in strange situations where things would be going really well in every part of my life, and I would just feel like I would have thoughts of suicide. And then when things didn't go well, like I'll give you an example. 2014, got a divorce, 2 kids at the time, 50-50 split. Anytime they weren't home, I'd almost feel paralyzed with depression. Things weren't going great in my business and obviously my romantic relationships. And that's when I actually thought of different ways to end my life. I thought of, just live next to the Golden Gate Bridge. That was a thought about, the carbon monoxide poisoning. It's almost to a fascination of, I would read stories about how different celebrities took their own lives. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't know how to tell my kids, it would always get to the point where how am I going to leave my kids hanging on this earth by themselves. And the fact that my doctor said, you got to go see a psychotherapist. And I always thought shame in using antidepressants. She's a friend of mine too. And she actually said, look, there's no shame in using those antidepressants. You're going through a tough time. Most people in this tough time, it's not a permanent solution, but it's a sure as heck a nice bridge. So put me on citalopram and then had this back pocket Xanax, which I say, and this is the most valuable thing that I never took a Xanax pill, but just knowing that I had it in my back pocket where if stuff really hits the fan, I could take one of those, was comforting. And I did some therapy, and a woman named Mel Robbins actually really helped me out. I appeared in a couple of her books as well, and I had some good conversations with her. And one of the things that got me out of the fear of public speaking and a lot of other phobias, was a focus on what happens at the end. Instead of picturing yourself having a panic attack, picture yourself delivering that talk and helping people, because I'm high on empathy, number 3 on my strength finder. Helping people and people benefiting from you being up there. And that was pretty dramatic in ways of helping. But I still, Andre, as we have discussed, I do suffer from depression. It's not something that just is cured by a pep talk or any type of pills. There's a lot of different things that help with depression and some of the anxiety that I face. And quite frankly, the best therapy, the best prescription, if you will, is talking to you right now, talking to other people about what's happening and just really being transparent about the whole thing.
Okay, let's talk about that, because one thing you did say was there was shame with getting therapy and taking medication, which is a very, very common thing with people, especially in the ADHD world. because a lot of it is negative connotations. Like with ADHD, it has more to do with it's a pharmaceutical companies controlling, and it has more to do with them than the person. But the thing is, you also said was really poignant for me is what I did with my ADHD. Like I went through therapy. Right now I'm taking dialectical behavior therapy. I did CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy. And you said the medication was not the cure.
No.
You got medications part of the treatment, therapy is part of the treatment, and talking is part of the treatment. And I think a lot of people need to be aware of that, and I think this is a lot of misnomer. No matter what diabetes, no matter what condition you have, pills is a cure. Medication is a cure, and I don't have to do anything. But that's not the case here. So I want to talk more about, okay, you take the medication, and that's an interesting spin about just knowing you have it there, give you that extra moral support. But let's talk about the therapy, the organized therapy, and what you're talking about is, I guess, friendly therapy. So yeah,
I had so a couple things. Yeah, I had my psychotherapist who was, just became, so older lady, just became a friend that I could just share everything under the sun with, everything, absolutely everything with. I also had another coach who was a therapist, and he was good just because it went from trying to perform, having him as a performance coach, because he has a background in therapy, to actually just kind of being a sounding board for that matter.
right.
And I think the other thing that has really helped me as well with the key people around me is just writing in a little journal that I do every day.
Yes.
So what do I mean by that is that there's no, like, I don't have a prompt. There's no like, oh, I got to write these gratitude things down. I will just write and write and write and write. And I typically do that first thing in the morning after meditation. And I write about how I'm feeling. And it's just like, I write in a way where no one is going to read this journal. In fact, I might not even reread parts of this journal too. It's all about just saying, I feel depressed, I feel angry, I feel this, I feel that. But along the lines, what happens is that things will pop in my head like, hey, you know what I love about myself right now?
Yeah.
These are the things I love about myself. Or, hey, you know what I'm really happy about or excited about? So there's the good and the bad, but getting that out on paper and having conversations like this are amazingly helpful. And
Powerful.
Andre, you don't, the medication, see, if you rely too much on the medication, it goes something like this. Take 10 milligrams of citalopram. Okay, things are good. Okay, oh no, something happens in my life. I've got a little PTSD or whatever's going on. Go from 10 to 15. Okay, now, oh no, something also happened 6 months later. Go 15 to 20, and you just keep upping the dose. And if you don't want to be suffering, because do the math. If you keep doing this, you're taking about 10 pills a day in about 10, 15 years. But by doing all these other things, by having the therapy, by having someone to talk to on that level, by having other people to share this with, and it's amazing when I'm very transparent about this, because I have I'm going to start a charity, or I've already started it actually, to focus on helping eliminate teen suicide and dealing with entrepreneur mental health.
That's good.
I start telling people about that. What happens is I share exactly what my experience is like right now. And you know what's funny is that no one has ever said, oh, that's great. I don't know anyone like that. Two things happen, or three things happen. One, I'm suffering from mental health issues. It's always been a struggle of mine. Or more likely, one of my kids, typical teenage kid, college kid, one of my kids, both of my kids, all my kids have some sort of mental health struggles, just like you. Yeah. So it's funny because they have like percentages of how much the population. I think that number is severely low because
I believe it. Yeah.
Right. But from my little sample size of sharing this to people, I'd have to say majority of the people in this country suffer some sort of mental health struggle.
Oh, easily. And it could be short. It could be like only a few months, or it could be on and off struggle, like you're describing. And like I suffer depression quite frequently, just the way that my ADHD works and the way I kind of let things happen. I go in and out of depressions quite frequently, but it's identifying and doing something about it. I think is also being more aware, right? If you got more awareness of the condition and more awareness of the triggers, I think you're better capable to use the tools at hand, either a friend to talk to, a therapist who's trained to take care of this type of stuff, and or medication, right? Oh, by the way, that's a really good idea with the mental health thing, especially with the entrepreneurial world, because I think that's one of the key demographic there that probably does not believe they could ever suffer mental health, because I must be successful. I got to keep going. And it'll probably be one of the ones in my experience, in my observation, would be the ones that push that kind of stuff aside, because self-care is last on the list, especially when you're trying to build. So can you explain more, out of working with a psychotherapist and or a therapist, what is different? What do they bring to the table that talking to a friend wouldn't? And what do you get out of them? Because I think you get something more different out of working with a psychotherapist than you would talking to a friend who shares a likely experience or is just really good at listening.
Yeah, there's value in both of them. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it is different. I think with me personally, in talking to a psychotherapist, and this goes with a lot of the important people I hold as consultants, coaches, therapists, whatnot. When they have dealt with individuals like myself, when they have experiences, maybe in their own lives or their clients' lives, I feel like it allows me to feel as open as possible, one, but also the fact that mindset of I'm in this with their other people, right? They have other people just like me, and it feels like it doesn't feel as lonely. I also have a high level of trust with these individuals that it's, so my psychotherapist, the reason why she's a psychotherapist as opposed to a therapist is she can prescribe medication.
Okay.
But I also have a really good understanding of the fact that her goal is not to just wrap this around the psychotherapy prescription and take these pills and keep seeing me when you see me when it doesn't work, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because just the questions she's asking me, checking in, and I can even just be vulnerable and just saying, hey, this is what I'm feeling, or I had this situation, or I was triggered by this situation. But talking to somebody like that has kind of been through some situations, right? It's kind of like talking to a basketball coach and just saying, okay, they're running a box and one on the small forward. How do we overcome that? Kind of that same thing. It's just like a lot of times, Andre, too, it's just like sometimes it's unexplained. Sometimes it's explained, like you have some sort of trauma in your life, right? Or you're triggered by something. And for me, there are triggers that can go towards feeling more depressed than other times or create anxiety.
Oh, yeah, much, yeah.
Right. And so the therapist helped me realize some of those things and have in terms of not popping a pill, but having some sort of trigger blocker, right? Mm-hmm. To kind of shake things up and just like, okay, instead of going down the spiral, you're going to kind of be aware of what's happening. And it's kind of like being in a ring with a boxer, right? If you don't know that punch is coming, you get knocked out. But if you know that punch is coming in certain situations, you can block the punch. You might hurt your arm a little bit, but you're not going to get knocked out. Right. Having that awareness and having a counter to that is an amazing way to kind of prevent yourself from downward spirals.
Yeah, so it's almost as if they're teaching you to look at their shoulder, to look at something else that can give you the early warning of the punches coming.
Exactly. And a lot of times too, sometimes there's sometimes these unexplained types of triggers that you just like, this came out of nowhere, right? It's like all of a sudden I found myself in the ring and a boxer appeared and he hit me over the head.
Yeah, or two more showed up behind you.
Yeah, and then like talking this through both of my therapists, they start to kind of see certain trends of other people that they've talked to, other clients, other patients, right? And just said, oh, no, don't feel like you're the only person that has suffered this, right? And so, right.
Yeah, it's a lonely feeling thinking you're the only one, but in reality, it's not.
It's like life is good, and I'm on this trend, and no trauma, and all of a sudden I get hit over the head. But what two things will typically happen? One is that they unravel, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there was that trigger that I just wasn't aware of." But now talking to you, it's identified that. The other thing is that maybe there was no trigger, but just the fact that like, hey, these things are going to happen, Mark. It's not a failure. And that's a big thing. It's not a failure on your part. You have a chemical imbalance, and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. You're going to have these feelings with no type of trigger, and it's okay. And again, you go back to that awareness part. You become aware of that, and you know that you're not alone, that these things happen. It doesn't mean that you're going to completely spiral down and ruminate over this thing. That's more than half the battle right there.
Yeah. And catching yourself, no matter where you catch yourself, at the beginning, in the middle, or near the end, as long as you catch yourself, you win.
That's right. Instead
of letting it go out. Right. Or like, my emotional dysregulation was really horrible. And at times I can constantly remember going, I could stop it, but I just don't care, or I just don't want to, and I'll let it go. Right.
Exactly.
So, I think those are very valid points. Like here in Canada, we got that, what you're describing, a psychotherapist is what we call a psychiatrist. And then we got a psychologist, or social work would be more on your therapy side. And with my experience, that's the one-on-one therapy versus group. You're in a safe environment too.
Yes.
And knowing that person is not related, or doesn't know your parents or your family or your friends, you let yourself be a lot more vulnerable.
That's right.
Open up and get true feedback.
That's right.
Not necessarily, I never ever called it feedback. All they did was ask some fantastic questions and then pointed out some things I should observe.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And they never made me feel like I was a failure, or, how was it this week, Andre? Well, last week it was a shit show. Like I just kept losing it right, left, and center. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's go through a couple scenarios and see what happened. Right. And it's just, I understand, I get it, and like for me, I say there's some things I don't want to work on. They're like, no problem. Maybe later, maybe not now, but just not now. Right. So how would that be? Just got a couple more minutes here, but how would it be different than talking to a friend or a confidant? Like you said, that's another part of the treatment program.
So when you talk to a friend, the difference there is the fact that everyone that I told, so I'll just kind of back up a little. In 2014, I didn't tell a soul. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't really say much about it. I talked to my doctor about it, but nobody knew. Nobody knew I was depressed. Nobody knew I had anxiety. Nobody knew that I had suicidal thoughts. And then I started to kind of open up a little bit about it. And then it became opening up to people in a safe environment. And actually, they actually weren't my per se best friends, right? It was just happened to mention something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And then it became mentioning it to some of the close people in my life, and mentioning the people that I utterly trusted. And all of a sudden, it just felt a relief. And the therapy I got from that, and which was an amazing message, which was, when you tell this to the right people, you tell this to anyone for that matter, but specifically to your close friends, and I told my team this recently, when you tell that to them and you just kind of see the reactions on their face, which is just like and they say this, but it's more of the message they're sending you back is, hey, I understand. And
Everything makes sense now.
everything makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that pretty much everyone has told me this too. And quite frankly, Justin, which I think he's, this is one of the big reasons why he's one of my favorite people, is the fact that he wrote a chapter on this. It's like, if you're feeling down, you go talk to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
And like sharing it with Justin, his reaction was the fact that now he's like dead last in empathy, right? Here's a dead last empathy. Right? The words that came out of his mouth were 24/7. You ever want to talk to anybody, and you just want to talk, or you want advice, or you want just to someone hear you out on feeling whatever you're feeling, consider me the first person on that list.
Oh, that's spectacular.
A lot of people have told me that. And so again, it goes back to like the pills of Xanax. It's like, I may never use that power button, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. We never use that pill in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But just knowing that I have a bunch of people 24/7, press the button, hey, I'm feeling this. That's alone kind of gives you the confidence that you can get through a lot of things.
Yeah, there's something to lean on, someone to lean on and be a support scaffold.
Right. And you know what the funny thing is that when, not funny, but when I share this with people in every situation, whether it's a friend, a teammate, an associate, a client, a friend like Justin, or partner like Justin, that improves the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Huge.
Automatically.
And then what I want the listeners to know here, because I know some of you don't have ADHD, but if a friend does come up to you and want to talk about a mental health or some of their concerns, just be aware that we're not there for solutions. We just just want someone to hear us. So validate what they're feeling. You don't need to solve it. And actually, sometimes trying to solve the problem might make it worse or might turn them off. But all we need is someone to hear us, validate or confirm that what we're feeling is understood. And to me, that's a huge one. Just being there to listen and not say anything is a very powerful thing as support. So the one thing I want to take away from today was, like you said, it was all in your head. People didn't think you were depressed, but I remember I was in one of the Facebook support groups I'm in, and someone played a meme. It says, it's surprising, but depressed people are really good at masking and looking like happy people.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Just like people who's very anxious can mask themselves to look like very confident and in control people. So masks are deceiving. And like you said, relief is talking to a friend or someone that understands it. And at the same time, structured psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, part of the therapy, part of the remedy, which includes medication for some and maybe not for others. Mark, we're going to have to continue this, but we're going to have to end right now. So I want to thank you for your time, but we're going to have this as part 1, and we're going to continue on part 2 next week. So if you can just hold on there. I just want to thank you, the listeners, for listening to this. And we just need to talk. There's nothing to be ashamed about. Like Mark said, it's a chemical imbalance, but once you start working on stuff, you can change the chemistry in your brain. Your brain is not static. It fixes it one way. You can fix it back again with work. So again, Mark, thank you for your honesty and being very vulnerable here. I really thank you. And thank you to the listeners. I'd like to hear from you about this episode. If you can, email me at questions@theimpulsivethinker.com. And thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre.